Well, first of all, I thought that Andrew was spectacular. I thought that the rhythm, the litany, the pattern, it could have been a Shakespearean speech. A condemnation of the tyrant, a vicious, unending problem. Go back and listen to it sometime, since it is available online. You just listen to the rhythm. His Oxford education gives him such an extraordinary advantage. In America, if you sound like him, you have a 20-point higher IQ by the act of being able to speak. My good friend EJ continues the great tradition of the American elite media, which is they hated Trump before he ran, they hated Trump while he ran, they hated Trump when he was sworn in, and this morning they hate Trump. I want to pose a problem for all of you that's a real problem for a free society. How would you know? A 4-star general in the Marine Corps, retired, who lost a son in active duty, went to the press court today in Washington and said, so much of what you report is false that it is an enormous problem. Another 4-star general, that was the Chief of Staff, John Kelly, retired, serving as Secretary of Defense, said yesterday, the media reports about Trump wanting to have a 10-fold increase in nuclear weapons are totally false. Now, you may decide they've both been infected, as my friends would suggest. They've become Trumpized. They no longer know the truth. Or you may decide that a great deal of what you believe is total hogwash, brought to you by a news media which is so deep into its own incestuous ideology and its own way of keeping score that it hasn't a clue what Donald Trump is doing, because it cannot allow itself to think openly and objectively. And I'll give you some examples. His speech in Warsaw is an extraordinary document. It's comparable to Reagan. And I say that with some knowledge because Tony Dolan, who was Reagan's chief speechwriter, helped write it and said this was equal to anything Reagan ever said in defense of Western civilization. But of course, if you're on the left, the very idea that you would defend Western civilization is probably proof that there's something wrong. Read his United Nations speech, which has a core argument. You may disagree with the argument, but it's not trivial. He says, the base of freedom starts with sovereignty. If the United Nations is a collection of sovereign countries who then reach agreements, it's useful. If, however, we're moving towards a globalization with a bureaucratic, legalistic system in which our nations are merely subordinate parts of this larger thing, then it's stunningly dangerous. Now, I don't know about you, but I headed, along with George Mitchell, the former Democratic leader of the Senate, a 3-year study of the United Nations. The idea that the General Assembly should replace the Canadian Parliament or the American Congress as a source of ultimate authority is insane. Look at who belongs to it. Look at who's on the Human Rights Commission. If you're not a tyrant or a dictator, you're not allowed on. So they all get together and say, hey, we're doing fine, but of course Israel should be condemned. Israel's condemned like 100 times a year. Oh, it must be Tuesday. Can we go condemn Israel? Now, you wouldn't want to condemn Venezuela or Cuba or Zimbabwe. You certainly wouldn't want to consider what the Chinese are doing to create a truly totalitarian system of information in which they are now tracking every cell phone in China. Well, that'd be inappropriate. So I think what Trump was saying was very profound. You might look at what Trump is doing to deregulate. Now, you can agree or disagree, but he is returning power to the states. He's returning power to local communities. He's actually following the law. And I know from my friends over here who claim they worry about democracy, the great number of executive orders that were illegal and unconstitutional were signed by Barack Obama. They were not signed by Donald Trump. So there are profound differences. Look, there's a simple problem underway. the American people rebelled. This is not a local thing. It's happening in Austria. It happened in the city of Rome, which elected the first woman mayor in 2,500 years history. It's happening in Catalonia. You can't blame all of these things on Trump. Merkel just had the worst election since 1946 for the conservative parties in Germany. People are unhappy around the planet. Well, they were unhappy in the US, and they decided that the source of their unhappiness was Washington, and they wanted somebody who'd kick over the table. And here's where we are. He's draining the swamp. The alligators are unhappy, and two of the lead alligators are here tonight defending him.